Welcome to the teachings of today's Holy Mass with Reverend Father Alphonsus. Be blessed by the love of Christ, who seeks the elevation of all his children through his word.
The Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. On the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Peter then came out with the other disciple, and they went towards the tomb. They both ran, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first, and stooped to look in. He saw the linen clothes lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb, and he saw the linen clothes lying, and the napkin which had been on his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
He saw and he believed. What did they believe? It is easy for us to say they believed in the resurrection, that Jesus had risen. Glory to God. Huh? Glory to Jesus. Look, when we say glory to Jesus, we mean it, because we are calling the name of the cosmic one, unimaginable in his stead. Same with the Father, co-equal, co-eternal, co-immortal, co-creators. So the glory cannot be measured. It's just that we use the limited sense of our self-worth to appraise God. You know what I want to discuss with you today is, in summary, what I've always told you about. How dignified you and I are. You know, in later years, the people of God came to understand that no one can see God and live. Was it like that when Adam and Eve were still in communion with God? Was it like that? No, it wasn't. Adam and Eve were created as deities. You and I were created as deities. So you don't need a priest. You don't need a prophet. How can you need a priest? The function of a priest is to intercede between man and God. But when you are a deity yourself, what kind of priesthood would not be practiced? Because you yourself, you are a dimension of God. So you can hear that God walked into the garden and Adam and Eve hid. Do you know what that means? If God comes here, will you hide? Because you will not even see him first of all. You will not need to hide. You only hide from what you see. Isn't it? If God comes like this, in fact, you go to many churches, people are making noise, even when there's a blessed sacrament there. So they don't even know that God is there. But when the parish priest comes in, they'll start hushing each other. Shh, shh, shh. In case maybe the parish priest has been vehement, saying you must not speak inside the church. So what they see, what they know that they see, is what they can hide from. So they have seen the parish priest, so they can hide. But God is even more present than the parish priest, and they are not hiding. Why? Because they can't see him. So it is important to understand the status of Adam and Eve. For them to have seen God and hid themselves, it meant that they had the capacity to see God. They were always in communion. That is what human beings are. You see, until we understand and accept this position of human beings, we can never do business in the spiritual realm. You can never stage a warfare and have the confidence that you will succeed. Because one of the easiest sentiments of our humanness today, of course, because of our fallen nature, we keep saying we are not worthy, we are not worthy, we are sinful. Even worse for those who have not started the fight against sin itself. They just dismiss themselves. Every small breeze can blow their foot off the floor. Every small threat can make their heart shake. Look, it is important to understand who you were. But even now, after Jesus has come, we can no longer say who we were, but who we are. So this is the first thing I want us to put in mind. The human beings that God created are deities. You are a deity. But after the devil had tricked Eve, and we cut communion with God, the human beings started living in frustration. I can tell you, Adam and Eve started living in frustration. And that was when, with two of them, the garden was full. They had not thought about giving birth to children. It was after they pursued them out of the garden that they now thought about giving birth to children. So you can see, they were now under the system of the devil. To be frank with you, I cannot tell you how it was meant to be procreation while they were still in the garden. I don't know. Because they gave birth to children outside of the garden. So I cannot tell whether it's this our normal way of giving birth to children that they would have still practiced while inside the garden. But there is something I can tell you for sure. Remember, Eve said she delighted in the knowledge she was going to get from eating the forbidden fruit. When the devil suggested to her that there is knowledge God is hiding from them, at the moment they eat of the fruit, they will become enlightened. Are you with me? So we don't know whether they now said, okay, then since God has driven us from the garden, who else do we turn to?
Share, and if you haven't,
they will not, so we don't even know.
And join us for
we don't even know now if this current way of giving birth was approved by God. Because there are many things you can think about. If men are now finding pleasure in men sexually, women are now finding pleasure in women sexually, it could be that there were to be other ways by which human beings were to occupy the world. So we could see that maybe this style we are using now is the system that same primordial enemy had suggested, so that you can populate the world. You see, once you are depressed, once you are oppressed, depressed, and frustrated, go and find out. Any solution is a solution. Any advice is better. Anything they tell you, you've not seen somebody who has cancer, tell the person to use his sheet to bathe. The person will try it. Cancer. Tell the person to use cow sheet to rub on the hair and stay inside the house for 4 days, not washing the hair. The person will try it because the person wants cow sheet and wants cancer to go. When you are down, any suggestion will be taken. So who knows? Because it was after they left the Garden of Eden that they gave birth. And leaving Garden of Eden meant they left the presence of God. So everything Adam and Eve did, they did no longer in communion with God. They did by their own selves. And the devil was with them. You see, does it hide? When they eventually gave birth, you saw that they gave birth to sin. Immediately, their first generation of children had the hand of the devil implanted. The imprimatur of Satan was the loudest one can ever imagine. It was in the very first generation. You could imagine people who are coming from the deity status of a god. You give birth to your first generation child. Your first child, Abel is not the first. Abel is second. Cain! Your first child committed murder, killed his own brother. So the imprimatur of Satan was so loud. You know? So you can see the consequence of being cut away from God. And it followed. It continued. And then Cain went with his wickedness. He was the one that formed world system. You see, when Adam and Eve now gave birth again, they now gave birth to Seth. It was Seth who now gave birth to the child that now initiated calling on the name of the Lord. And this was in the period of Enosh, that human beings now started returning to the Lord, calling on the name of the Lord. It was at this time that priesthood was now needed. Have you read Genesis? It was at this moment that priesthood was now needed. But you know what I want to cite out today? You see, there is something very special about John that every Christian must understand. You know what John said in 1 John chapter 1 verse 1? He says, that which was from the beginning, the origin, is that which we have heard, that which we have seen, which we have handled with our own hands, which we have seen with our own eyes. He says, we have looked upon and we have touched concerning the word of life. The life was made manifest. He says, we saw it and we testified to it as number one witness. Do you know the meaning of that sentence? John was taking us back to Genesis. Only Adam and Eve could make the statement that John is making now. Only Adam and Eve saw the glory of God one-on-one, directly as he is, because they were co-deities. So if John is making this statement, this is a letter of St. John, this is not the Gospel of St. John. If John is making this statement at the beginning of his first letter, that which we have seen, which existed from the beginning, so he's taking us back to before the world began. He says that reality of God is what human beings today have handled. So Jesus Christ, through his action and his activities coming into this world, has brought us back to the original status of Adam and Eve. Sometimes we are even too weak to understand these mysteries. You see, John was the one to whom God revealed numerous mysteries. You know, it was like the ones that weren't revealed completely in Daniel, they were unlocked through the apocalypse in John. The day a Christian will realize who he is or who she is, the devil will shrink that day. You know, every one of us are still in the process of realizing it. John is that disciple that helped us to formulate, in conclusion, the work that Jesus Christ has achieved. I don't know if you are powerful enough to understand all I have just said, because I tried to describe to you the primordial status of man in Adam and Eve before the fall. They saw God face to face. They are the only ones that can repeat the statement that John is repeating now, after God knows how many eons, how many ages that have passed before Jesus Christ eventually came, from the moment Adam and Eve were created, because we cannot have a measurement of that time. So John is saying that you and I, remember what he says in John chapter, his Gospel, John chapter 1, in verse 12, 13. Remember what he said very clearly, that he came to the world which he created. They did not recognize him. He came to his own clan, the very place where his genealogy traced from. He says they did not accept him. He says, but for those who accepted him, he says he gave them the power to become sons and daughters of God. He says, born not out of flesh or of the activities of blood, nor of the will of man, born not out of the idea of marriage. Why? Why is it that the sexual authority that gave birth to you is what is being denied the moment you become an adopted son of God? They now say you are no longer a product of sex. They say you are now a product of the divine. Does that sound familiar? The birth of Adam, the creation of Eve, we are not products of sex. Who knows if sex was an idea propagated by Satan? He deceived them to eat apple before. Is it this one that will be difficult to deceive them to do? We have seen it in this world that, okay, this is the style. Because St. Paul says all have fallen short of the glory of God. And so what Jesus Christ has come to do is that even in that state of depression, he has come to mingle divinity with humanity. So the moment a man or a woman rises in God, you are no longer traced. You are no longer defined by your biology. You are no longer defined by your lineage. That's the reason why I want to tell you this seriously. You don't need to go to your village to go and uproot a pot, because they say that's where they bury the pot. You don't need to go there. What concerns a pot that was buried if your umbilical cord have been rerouted from your mother's womb to the womb of Zion? What will concern you with the ages of the past of your lineage? If your umbilical cord has been rerouted from your village lineage onto the lineage of God, as John himself said. So John is revealing things to us. The moment we accept Jesus Christ, you see, there will be a transformation in our lives. The first sign of transformation is victory over sin. It is in fact, somebody was speaking. I think Kate Green was a famous gospel musician, the most intelligent musician, one of the most intelligent musicians that could be recorded of this century. He said that the greatest miracle that happened in his life was that he was able to proclaim Jesus Christ, fight against sin, and then he was not ashamed to go door to door to talk about Jesus. You know who this guy is?
Please like,
he is a wealthy aristocrat,
if you haven't,
a musician from birth,
subscribe button and join
who was
us
already
for
a
daily
star
reflections.
at the age of 5, 6, was already in TV series at the age of 8, 9, 10. So this is not a small child. And then eventually grew into the world, mighty in the world. He did not even know he was a Jew. Don't forget, Jews don't want to hear about Jesus Christ. So that complicated his problem. Because he's a star, he does not want to belong to any religious affinity. He does not want to hear, I'm a Christian. Then that means when you're a Christian, then a Muslim will not be looking at you with one kind of eye. So he wanted to just stay. Those kind of people don't want anything to do with all this religion. You know how they look down on religion. That's who he is. When he was declaring his testimony of the greatest miracle, he said he knows himself. He knows himself. In fact, the greatest miracle he could ever recount was that he possibly was able to accept Jesus Christ. And accepting Jesus Christ meant turning his back against the world and against sin. Somebody is telling you that's the greatest miracle of his life, and you cannot contest it. Every one of us have been invited into this experience. You see, it is not only John that is meant to make this declaration that human beings, mortal men, have handled that which was from the beginning, and he describes it as things that they have touched with their hands, they have seen with their eyes, they have heard with their ears. They have handled it. They've had a relationship with it, bringing us back to the former status of Adam and Eve. We are the only ones that can hold ourselves. We are the only ones. If we invest enough in the truth about our Christianity, we will discover far more than we ever bargained for. There is still an open space to be filled in our spiritual lives. Do not close the door, because growth is just beginning in your life. You've not gotten anywhere. Growth is just beginning in your life. I discovered each time I achieve a new spiritual feat, I look more like a child. And now the space now becomes wider. You know, when I'm on the ground like this, the only geography I can imagine is this white compound like this. I turn 360, is this white compound. As I go high, I'll see wider geography. As I go high, I'll see wider geography. The more you go high, the more things you see that you are supposed to know. That is how it is in the spiritual realm. As you go high, you always consistently become like a pebble. But how beautiful is it for that ascension to begin in the first place? Because that ascension takes you directly to Zion. It takes you up until you get to the zenith. The zenith is the fulfillment of mystical marriage with God. And it is at that moment of mystical marriage with God that we can make the statement that John made today. I pray upon thee, and every one of you who are capable of listening to these words, that the Lord God will accompany your journey of faith and never leave you halfway. We beg you, Holy God and Father, to continuously open our eyes to see the more that we need to see, to hear the more that we need to hear, until we are able to touch you and to hold you close to ourselves. We make this prayer through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please like, share, and if you haven't, hit the subscribe button and join us for daily reflections.